going on. Thanks for
So let's get started on the first topic here. So I'm going to pull it up for everybody to see here. So let me zoom in for everybody so they can see this. So this is an article that was on the Washington Post. It says a majority of the people arrested for a Capitol riot had a history of financial trouble. I mean, that should have been obvious, right? Why else would they have been protesting there if, like, they're not financially stable? The majority of them, like, they're upset with the way that our country is right now. Like, they're feeling oppressed. If they had everything that they needed, they wouldn't be out there protesting, right? And then Ilhan Omar, she said, it's not economic anxiety. It's not economic anxiety. It's anxiety over losing status and power that's fueling right-wing extremism. There is a white supremacy radicalism in our society, and we can't afford to dismiss or normalize it. So the problem I see here is he's not looking at the root, right? Like, why do we see white supremacy in the first place? Isn't it because people are poor and then they don't have access to objective information? Our education system sucks. They're brainwashed from birth. They're raised in their society. They're taught lies throughout their whole life. So it's not looking at the root problem of how we can stop white supremacy from rising up. So I want to get your thoughts. Let's start with Dontel, man. What do you think?
So I think that was an interesting article, and it put some numbers to what a lot of us had kind of figured would have been behind some people being so radicalized by just the entire Trump movement since 2016. And I was listening to Rania Khalek's podcast, Left Bitches, and they talked about how this is like, it's a known fact that economic distress, economic devastation, that leads to people being more radicalized. And the example that they gave was back, like, the start of World War II. That wouldn't have happened. The Nazi Party wouldn't have rose to power if it hadn't have been for the events leading up to that. The way that World War One ended, and how the German people basically had to pay all the cost of the war, and they were put into like some type of crazy debt that they would never pay off for the rest of their lives, and that led to economic a terrible economic situation in Germany. And it's not to excuse the radical actions, but that's what it leads to. It makes it more, people are more susceptible to the most fringe and radical theories. So with this Washington Post story, and it sheds light on how people, like I said, how they become so easily radicalized and follow a charlatan like Donald Trump. And I like how they did it, because it wasn't just like, oh, what's their economic status now? It went back to like after the 2008 crash, and they went through the people who arrested, their financial data, and if they like were foreclosed, if they lost their homes, if they lost their jobs because of the economic crisis, and then what that led to ever since then, them not trusting political institutions, them being joining these fringe groups online where they spread a bunch of conspiracy theories. And so for Ilhan Omar to just completely dismiss that, I think it's just a very bad move. And because it's important to realize that that's the result of serious, like, economic hardship, what it can do to regular people. And it really hasn't been a lot of data on it from what has happened in the 2008 crash, and that created it really gutted the economy for most of the working class and the middle class. So there hasn't really been in-depth study into that, but this Washington Post article shed a little bit of light on it, and it shows that a lot of these people, they had, I think the amount of people who had to declare bankruptcy out of the people who were arrested was like twice the size of the national average, and things like that. So this is part of Trump's base. These are people who are diehard Trump supporters. And if that's what the terrible economic conditions before COVID led to, it led to 100,000 people basically lined up outside of the Capitol, and then a couple thousand of them to storm the Capitol. If that's what happened from the 2008 crash, we need to be paying attention, and we need to take note of that, because what's happening now is multiple times worse than that. It's the worst economic crisis in history. So if we don't address it, then it's inevitable that we would get more unrest, and it's going to get even worse than what we just seen with the riots in the Capitol.
Don't you think that this is taking away like responsibility from Congress? Like, oh no, it's not our fault. It's people. It's like these other working class people who are white supremacists and have this radical ideology. What do you think, Tom Coffey? What do you think?
Okay, so Unapologetic made a lot of good points, and I don't disagree with any of them. However, I want to call out. I just want to show you what the Washington Post did in this article. This is something that I see a lot of times. First they will put out this article and it will get copy pasted by the entire media. So every media outlet has copied this story and has put out the same point that they've put out. But I'd like to just take a step back and look at it. I do think that the characterization of these people is probably, a lot of confirmation bias. You think that's what they are, and so you come up with something to show it. But let's just take a look at the numbers that they gave. And here's the trick that the Washington Post did. They said that there were about 240 people arrested. They could only find public records on 125 of them. Okay? So about half, right? And then we're going to talk about foreclosures or bankruptcies. Bankruptcies. Well, in this country, all bankruptcies are public record. Okay, that's the way it is. Now, it is possible that you could have a sealed record. Those are very rare. So for the most part, all bankruptcies are public record. Well, if they could only find information on 125 of the 240 people, we can probably assume that the rest of the people that they couldn't find anything on didn't have a bankruptcy. Okay? And even if we use the numbers from the article, it says that by my calculation, is about 22 people out of the 125 had a bankruptcy, which rounds up to 18%. If we take those we take those same 22 people and we divide it by the 240 people that were arrested, it would be 9.1%, which is exactly the same as the U.S. population. There's no difference at all. There's zero difference. And so what I think happened here, this is my opinion, is that it's like, well, we couldn't, we need a new way to run down these supporters of Trump. We've run them down this way. We've run them down this way. Hey, author of this article, go out and find a different way to run them down. And so they manipulated this little statistic to show that they had double the bankruptcies. But when you look at their own numbers and you apply just a little bit of logic, it's the same as it is nationwide. There's no difference between the people arrested at the Capitol and the rest of the country. And when I looked out at the rest of the media that copy pasted this article, nobody seemed to question it. They all just bought the whole story. Now, I didn't go through and check the numbers for every single thing listed in the article. I just picked the first one that they listed, right, which was the bankruptcies, and I found out that it's the same. So I think that this is just a way to run them down. Now, does that mean that everything else that they said is wrong? No, of course not. And I agree with a lot of the conclusions that people are making about this, but to just manipulate the numbers to get to get the outcome that you want by excluding a big group of people, all the people that they couldn't find any public records of, but all public records, all bankruptcies are public records. So if they couldn't find a public record, they didn't have a bankruptcy. I mean, that's how it works. So I found just the premise of this article to be garbage. And additionally, I do agree that a lot of the people that were there were desperate, and that is what motivated them to be supporters of Trump and to go protest at the Capitol. And I think both those things can be true. We just don't need to prove it with some sketchy stats.
I think that's you made some good points there, and so I can't say exactly why it is that they didn't have the financial data for the other people who were arrested, but you do make a good point about the bankruptcies being public record. And so again, I'm not hanging my hat off of everything that the Washington Post says, but in terms of the topic in general of, did the economic conditions, was that part of what radicalized people and what brought them out there in the first place? And I strongly agree with that, because I don't think it's a coincidence that the same, within the months of the biggest protest movement arguably in the history of this country, definitely since the civil rights movement happened, and then the riot happened, all of this within just months of 60 million people losing their jobs and unemployed, have no way of providing for their families. All of this unrest it's not isolated incidents. So you make I can't refute your argument about how much we should trust the Washington Post numbers, but I do think that it's the economic conditions is important context to add to the conversation about why the people were there in the first place. And to the question kind of asked Tom before was about does this give them, like Ilhan Omar's response, it's like a get out of jail free card for Congress, because they haven't done anything, and the economic crisis that we're in, like, if those people who all at the Capitol, if they were getting monthly payments from the government, $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month from the government, would they feel the need to go out and protest the government in such a huge way, just because Trump says they stole the election or whatever else he was saying? Like, they maybe if they were at their homes and they were getting those checks, they probably would believe Trump, but would they have been so animated and so just fed up with the government that they would all take to the Capitol and hundreds of thousands of people would be out? I don't believe that. So I do think people like Ilhan Omar, they're trying to pawn off responsibility, because this unrest that's happening, not just with the riots at the Capitol, but with the protests, the Black Lives Matter protests over the last year, and just the rise in crime and stuff like that, that's because they aren't doing their job. And it's very convenient to say, a lot of them have tried to do for the entire time Trump was in office, was like, oh, there's nothing to see here. We did nothing wrong. It's not, don't blame us for any of it. It's just all of the bad things, Trump being elected, all his rabid supporters, is just because they're racist, and it's just because they're white supremacists. And don't look at us, because we're doing everything fine here. It's just them.
Yeah. And the sad thing is like they're trying to keep us divided and be like, oh no, they're the problem. And then like people are going to be arguing online saying, oh, this is why we need more censorship, because there's all these crazy people out there that are going to riot. But Marcus, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Well, my thoughts is I definitely agree with everything that Dantel and everything that Tom was saying. But I would like to probably uh, frame it from a different context and look at it a little differently. Um, yes, we can focus on the bankruptcy numbers, but I feel like we got to look at why this is the conversation at all. Why is the conversation that the Trump supporters, all of this is because of racism? If you look at the storming of the Capitol, it wasn't about a race issue. What it was about is you have a bunch of people who don't trust the government, don't trust what we've been seeing. And if you look at on the Democratic side, we had all of this stuff that was going on through the primaries that was shaky. You have Trump who goes and calls that stuff out. So you have us on the left agreeing and seeing this. You have Trump calling it out, seeing it. You have his people seeing it. So the logic that they would feel the general election would be rigged also, I don't feel it's too crazy, compared to some of the other stuff that they believe. But I feel whenever you try to, oh, well, they're a racist or they're this, it's easy to throw that out because the history of the recent Republican Party has definitely been tied to racism. And I'm one of the first people who is always happy to call out a racist or point out the dog whistles. But this isn't a situation where it's about racism. Yes, there are racist Trump supporters. Yes, there are racist Republicans, but that's just something that they're putting out there so that when they start cracking down more and more and more on any Trumpers or QAnon or anybody on the right, they're going to have people who will be on the left who are going to agree with them. And that's what their whole message is, to demonize these people so they can start attacking them. And so if they get some of us to agree also, then when they turn it around and start launching those same attacks on us, then it takes all of our I guess defense or I don't want to say defense, but it takes away our narrative, because it's like, hey, you guys were supporting him, now you guys are complaining when it's happening to you. And so I feel like they're just setting this up. You can crush the Republicans, and then shortly after that, they'll be dealing with us. So, I mean, that's kind of the way I see it. I feel like Ilhan Omar, what she's doing is she's just putting out the same message, which, all of the Democrats are putting out across the board. It's almost just a united front. So anybody who they consider, a right-wing Democrat or a left-wing Democrat or whatever kind of Democrat, they're all on the same page pretty much on everything. It's just the rhetoric comes out a little different.
Yeah. It's something all of you touched on is white supremacy really our top priority right now to be worrying about? I mean, there's people that are losing their jobs, losing their healthcare that's tied to their jobs. We're in all these wars that we're paying with our taxpayer dollars, right? Like, we are all being oppressed at the same time, and the white supremacists make up what? Like, I haven't seen the statistics, but I mean, it's probably like less than 1%. It's probably like 0.05%. But
one thing I'll add is that yes, the percentage of white supremacists are small, but the white supremacists that are the big problem that we need to worry about,
they're at the top.
They're at the top. Exactly. That's the problem we're having. Because how I see this is, we can slice and dice it multiple ways. Yes, you got racist right wingers, but do they really matter? The ones at the top who are racist, those are the ones that matter. I mean, so every little aspect, we could slice it to, okay, you have this side of it and that side of it. Yes, you have some racists over here, but is this what this whole movement is about? Is it about racism as a whole? No, that's silly. Now, Rush Limbaugh, if he was if he was leading that charge, then yes, I would say that. But it's Donald Trump. Donald Trump, all he's doing is he's just trying to play to the crowd, and he's feeling around to see what kind of reception he gets. And he just says certain things, and they take it to that extra level, because anybody who really thinks Trump is what led any of the right wing, it's bonkers, because they have been talking like this for 20 years. You know, if you listen to especially AM radio, they have been talking like this a long time. All they've been doing is waiting for a figurehead who's going to talk just like them. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if they actually get anything done. They just want somebody that's going to talk like them. And because from the right and the left, neither side has really gotten anything that they've been asking for. If you can get the right lip service, you get happy and you excuse a lot of things. That's the same thing which happened on the left with a lot of Bernie supporters. They're getting the rhetoric they want to hear, but are you going to actually get the tangible things?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom, and then I'll go to Dantel.
Okay. Well, why? The question is why is this even an issue with like the bankruptcies, and why is it framed that way? Well, it's framed that way because the Washington Post wants to put out further things to demonize some people. That's why. I think that they could easily make the case without doing that, and I just wish there would be reporting that we didn't have to read minds. I can't read minds. I don't know anyone that can, and so I really don't care for the attack of knowing what's in somebody's head or in their heart. I would rather just see what they do, and if they do good things, then I consider them good. And if they do things that we would consider racist or bigoted or whatever, then we can call that out for that. But we can't get in people's minds. And I think if we project onto people all of these things, it's just going to keep us divided, and we're not going to make the progress that we're trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point that you made about, is white supremacists the number one issue right now? And I think that's something that should be talked about, because of course nobody's saying that white supremacists are good and
right.
We should all welcome them
Yeah.
with open arms. But priorities, like if you go talk to 100 people on the street, ask them what their biggest concerns are. Some type of white supremacist violence, right-wing extremist violence, it's not in their top concerns. They're probably concerned about how they're going to put food on the table. They're probably concerned about how they're going to keep the lights on. They're probably going to be concerned about whether or not they're going to get evicted. Or are they going to catch COVID? And if they catch COVID, how are they going to pay the medical bills? Like, there are real things. And then another part of it is, too, like, okay, white supremacy and racism, it's something that, as a society, we should deal with, and we should get to the bottom of, because it's been a problem in this country and around the world for a very, very long time. But this whole, like, let's focus on it now because Trump's racist, and we want to call Trump supporters racist, and we're going to act like this is the thing that everybody.
Can you guys hear him?
His audio cut out.
Oh, Dantel, your audio cut out.
Bad guys, you're not going to solve racism like that. And whatever other theories you have to solve racism, it's probably not going to go away in the near future. So, but what we do have control over, what is easily addressed, are economic issues. And that's where the focus of people in Congress should be, because no matter what law they pass, no matter what type of commissions they try to set up, they're not going to solve racism. But they can solve people, their economic situation, and they can deal with that. So anything else other than that, focusing on anything other than that is a distraction, and is just, it's taking us in a direction that they can just continue to basically leave the public for dead and focus on everything and anything else that will attract eyeballs and act as a smokescreen for what the real problem is, which is the unprecedented, unforgivable failure of government during the worst emergency in U.S. history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There-
So just as an example, I'm out here in Oregon, and today my congressman co-signed something, that they're going to put in to not allow any building or whatever to be named after Trump. And they put it in, the language is that nothing would be named after someone that's been impeached twice, right? And this is
I
what
saw
he's
that.
concentrating on today, where we still have people in Oregon without power right now. There's huge shutdowns the past couple of days because we've had so much snow. But that's what he's concentrating on. Earl Blumenauer, my congressman, is let's make sure that we don't name anything in the future after Trump.
But Tom, I mean, look at what's going on with Pelosi. She's up there talking about a 9/11 style commission on the Capitol. You know why they're trying to do that? Because that gives them another thing to focus away from getting anything done. Also, it works in two ways, because CNN, MSNBC right now, their ratings are dead.
Yeah.
Now that Trump is gone, they don't have any ratings. So if you talk about Trump for think about it, the 9/11 commission took a year and a half. They talk about Trump for at least another year, they're just doing it for ratings.
Mm-hmm.